So actually, I was working in the cannabis industry as a commercial realtor, commercial broker, trying to find industrial space for operators, trying to find retail locations for dispensaries, and that kind of honest to God, I was in the office late. I got a call from a dispensary operator that their zoning changed on their property, and they had a matter of days before they could, um, you know, before they had to execute for the next stage of their licensing, and so they had to find a new location. So I spent 3-4 days with these guys. We found a location, executed the deal. After the lease was signed, the president of that company, pulled me aside and said, I think you should come sell cannabis for me and stop selling real estate. And at the time, I took like a 70% pay cut, but I saw I saw what was coming. I mean, I was young enough at the time that I could afford to do that, to be able to start, based essentially at the beginning of an operation. And that's where I got my feet wet. He brought me on as as a regional sales, as a bullish, tiny MSO out of Arizona that got acquired by Cresco 8 months after I started with them. And that's kind of how I got my transition to the more corporate side of cannabis. I worked for MPX, ran operations for Iantis for 3 or 4 years, the state of Maryland, oversaw, the entire state. I was the GM and vice president of operations for the state. SunMed was a supplier in the state of Maryland that I had done business with for a number of years as a buyer at both the initial operation I worked for, which was just an independent processor, and then working for Iantis, where I was running retail and processing, wholesale and sourcing material. So SunMed and I had a rapport for a long time, and then they got an opportunity to acquire a processing license. They had been a cultivator solely for the beginning 4 years of the market here in Maryland, and an opportunity presented itself. I moved up here to where I now reside and been here 3 years, and it's been a lot of fun. And it's one of those things we say about Summit. When the Yankees call, you pick up the phone.
Well,
so
you were at the Mets though.
Yeah, yeah, eventually, yeah.
Yeah, that's really funny. So it's funny when you take risks early in your career, it feels so big, but it's also so much less risky because you don't have, in some cases, a family. You don't have, all the mortgage payment, all the stuff. So,
Yeah.
I applaud risk early. Nice job.
And the reality is, and I think, if there are people that are listening to this that are bullish on, being their own business owner, a small business owner, and an entrepreneur in the space, I basically had that role, but somebody was paying me to do it, right? And
Totally.
that's the way they got to look at it. Like I put in crazy hours. I mean, the first operation I ran was 2.5 hours from my house, and I drove there 3 days a week. So the first 12 months in the cannabis space, I probably put 140,000 miles on the road
because I was to get a hotel room.
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, there was actually a rental property that the company owned that I would crash at, where we had other guys that were all working for us that were living at. But I mean, I was making all the deliveries, making all the sales, helping package. I mean, you better be ready to do everything under the sun, and don't feel that you're special because you own the company. I mean, get ready to get your hands dirty and grind. Because if you're going to be, why I've been successful in this space is because I've always had the mentality that you got to lead by example, and you got to be willing to do every little job that there is and grind it out. And I mean, the first operation I ran was a staff of 4 people. Right. And so you wore many hats, and that's just what it was, because you got to get revenue positive before you can really start filling out your staff.